Hello, Cammie. Nice seeing your smiling face. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Dimitris, calling from MetalKaoz, and I'm in Chicago. So we have very interesting stuff to talk today. Before getting into the album itself, this is the first album released via Season of Mist. Did you had the album? Did you have the album ready before signing with them?
Um, I don't actually remember. Yes, we were already working on the album, just in the plan of what we were doing, and then we switched over and signed with them. So yeah, it would have already been in the making.
So, what difference does it make for a band like Oceans of Slumber that have been around, right, since 2011, to have a new record deal?
Um, it doesn't really change anything as far as like the output, but it makes us feel better to feel supported and understood. Um, I would say that's been the biggest elements added to this
Mm.
transition and new relationship with Season of Mist to have a team that seems excited about what we do and understands what we do and wants to see our success as much as we do. So um, it's I can say that's what it's meant to us this time around.
Perfect. And you added in the lineup Alex Davis on the guitars and Chris. I sense Greek.
Critical.
He's
Yes,
Greek.
he's very Greek.
I am Greek, so this is why I posed
Oh, awesome,
to
exciting.
make it. um, So, what do these gentlemen bring to the sound of the band or to the songwriting?
Well, they definitely bring some fresh blood and some new eagerness. Um, Alex is a phenomenal guitar player. He has a lot of amazing riffs and he does a lot of intricacies and you can come help too. I'm not gonna. No, I know, and I'll get to that. Go away. Dover is here listening and eavesdropping, making me nervous.
Hey, Robert, you shouldn't do that. Come on.
Dover did all of the songwriting. That's his thing. He's like, they didn't write anything, but Dover did all of the songwriting, and so their talents are bringing to life what he's laid out, the structure that he has planned. But I love their energy and their eagerness to be a part of the project and move the band forward. Chris is a studio owner and
Mm.
um, sound engineer, so he's brought a ton of organization to the band as far as getting the demos laid out and getting our on stage inner systems set up, and he has his own style, and I think it's really neat. They're young guys and they just have a lot of energy.
Yeah, they're young guys, like as if you are old. Come on, Kemi.
No, no, yeah. Yeah.
I'm 50, so you kind of make me feel old now. So anyhow, how long did the making of the album take? I mean, from start to finish.
I would say it took about a year,
Hmm. Okay.
maybe a little less. Um, yeah, about a year by the time, but from when I got the first song to finish like writing something to the first song, and we were like in Bogota, I'd say about a year,
Okay.
which is
And
standard. I mean, we write really fast, and Robert writes really fast.
And this is quite a complex album. And based on the press release, it seems like it is a concept.
Yeah, it's definitely a concept. Not to stick anyone too heavily like into a storyline or a narrative, but it's meant to feel sort of like a soundtrack
Okay.
to to a movie that doesn't exist. The soundtrack were to come first, or if the soundtrack was all we had, to come across these musical elements that paint this picture. It's this post-apocalyptic sci-fi sort of future where religious dogma has sort of taken over and people are oppressed and looking for revolution and looking for revolt, and finding that they are uncovering these things about themselves. To have this protagonist who you could say is me as the narrator, like moving through this and understanding when you grow up in something, when you grow up in an indoctrination, it's often hard to know all the intricate ways that it even shapes your outlook, that you might easily notice the big parts and be like, yeah, I don't agree with that. But there's more subtleties and intricacies that sometimes, have their spots in your mind that you don't realize are still those biases of the indoctrination that you got, of the religious dogma, like getting in. And so the album is this uncovering of sorts in this internalized, like, metaphorical way, but then also in a literal way, because you live in a land where the religious entities are the government, they are the ruling systems, and they're trying to make sure that people believe because that keeps them controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a big expansive awakening of sorts that this character is going through, while simultaneously taking charge to sort of lead this revolt against the system that needs to set people free.
Well, you said sci-fi, but what I hear is not too sci-fi, if you know what I'm saying, because there are many of the things that you just described are what some people experience every day. And
I think that the greatest fiction takes many parts of fact. And I think that in any future, that sort of storyline will be one that will always resonate with people, because it does happen. It is happening.
yeah,
And in a way we always reflect what we are experiencing and what we're seeing in the world around us, like as a band. That's why our albums are so different from each other. We're storytellers, and that means listening to people's stories and being observant, not just, pushing our good time and our good time only. And
mm-hmm.
so this album is a big reflection of the things that have been going on and how the world has been feeling tense and turbulent. And so we aesthetically, I guess that's where the sci-fi future comes from, of envisioning sort of um a cyberpunk, the Blade Runner future,
Mm-hmm.
sort of highly technology driven future, but at the same time it's so religious. I feel like that makes a good sort of murky contrast.
Yeah,
But yeah, it is there are, and that's why I say I don't want to pin anyone down to being like it's so concept album, like you have to immerse yourself in this world. It very much is a world that reflects now, that if we continue going in this direction, it could be our dystopian future. But you're going to definitely find themes and elements that feel like they're written about things that are happening now, because, in a way they are.
yeah, unfortunately. You mentioned that Saints of Sound. So obviously, I will make the comparison between the previous album and this one. So there is a huge shift in sound, but don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is bad. To my mind, this is good. As long as the band is happy and inspired to write the music, I'm good. So how would you describe that shift? You touched upon by saying that the band talks about writes music that expresses themselves as the world is changing. So can you elaborate on? I talk too much, sorry.
You're fine. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're a band that is having a conversation with ourselves and with our expression and with our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you wouldn't always wear the same outfit and go to the same place to meet with your friends to talk about the same subject, you change clothes, you change places, you change topics. That's how we are as a band. We're less the familiar neighborhood bar where you can always have a good time and have a beer. We're more like your therapist that you go and you see, and you have to get to some dark places and some heavy topics, and it's going to change and it's going to be uncomfortable and you might not be ready for it, but it's aiming to be something that you need rather than just something that you want. And so with Starlight and Ash, it was a very different time in our lives. We wrote it during the pandemic, and things had slowed down. Things were a lot more reflective and revealing in a lot of ways. We were listening to old CDs and old albums, kind of getting back to your roots in this time where you just had to spend a lot of time at home. You had to spend a lot of time with family. And for us, that brought up these gospel, folk, country elements that we decided to incorporate in an album that told stories.
Yeah.
And they told stories about the different childhood traumas that members of the band had gone through, because what was everybody doing while they were at home? They were reflecting, they were worried, and they were dealing with parts of themselves that in the busyness of being able to go out and do things, it kept it at bay. Well, with Starlight and Ash, it had everybody kind of thinking and getting in on themselves. And so that's what that album reflected, which it resonated with a lot of people because that's what other people were going through.
Mm-hmm.
That we're a band that's less about a good time and more about like true, deep self-reflection and self-expression. And the albums that we make, they're an ongoing conversation. They're meant to be different and feel different because we're like I said, we're not an algorithm band that needs to just fit this one line to reach the same people every time and talk about the same thing and just make you feel good. It's like there's a release and cathartic feelings of letting go, of validation, of healing, of grief. And that's what we play to. That's what we are answering within ourselves when we create this music versus just sticking to a formula and doing the same thing because we know it's going to be successful. And if that means that we don't get the commercial success of maintaining something that an algorithm can know what to do with, then that's kind of what it is. But that also just means that our albums might be different. It's not a new direction. It's just a new conversation. You don't flip out when your friend brings up some random topic. You're like, oh, you've never talked about this before. Is this your whole new personality? Like, you don't say that to people.
Well, you don't, but some people do.
Right. Some people are like that. And you're like, to me, it's kind of a weird thing to feel about a band. Like, oh my God, they're never going to do something heavy again. Like, what is this? And you're like, it was one album. Like, everybody calm down. And so we're a metal band first and foremost. We always will be a metal band. And so no surprise, now we have another heavy album because we weren't declaring, that we were not going to ever be heavy again. We were just showing a more sensitive side of ourselves that has always been a thread through what we've done. Winter, Banished Heart, they always had these elements. We just made an album that had more of these elements on it at one time versus, mixing in maybe the growls or the blast beats. But, now we're back to something heavy because we feel called to reflect the turbulence, called to reflect the turmoil, called to reflect the anger, the literal bombs going off on everyone everywhere, the weather that's crushing us. Like, everything is angry and everything is unbalanced. And this album is meant to shed light on that and to thread its way into a soundtrack for how people are feeling so that they know they're not alone, so they don't feel alone through all of this, or that there's some sort of measure of hope or an idea of getting through it. We have Don't Come Back from Hell Empty-Handed, meant to be a call. It's like everyone might be going through incredibly hard times, but learn something from it and don't just suffer for nothing and try and come out on the other side either more knowledgeable, more formidable, or more hopeful. And so, it's a lot of passion behind what we do, and sometimes it's going to ebb and flow, and that's why our albums sound different.
Well, my question was not aiming to criticize the band the way you say.
No.
I didn't came like that.
No,
okay.
No, I didn't.
But it's interesting that during the pandemic, the band wrote something less heavy, more calm. And one would expect the band to feel better and not produce such an aggressive album. However, this is exactly what happened with the pandemic. In the beginning, if you remember, everybody was talking, let's do some self-searches, let's improve ourselves.
Yeah, everybody's
Newsflash,
doing
everybody,
yoga and
no
stuff.
one improved and everything got worse.
It's
Right?
so true. The world opened back up and they're like, oh, I thought we were going to be better. And it's like, no, we're just shittier and meaner and more selfish. And you're like, oh, okay.
So
Yay.
there you go. I understand the shift to this heavier music. Before I ask you specifically for the vocals, what input did you give to another Greek one, to Yannis, about Yannis Nakos, about the cover artwork?
Well, we laid out, we had some movies in mind for elements to sort of inspire him for the cover. We really wanted to capture the colors that are in Dune, as well as Blade Runner. The scenes in the town, it's very orange, and it's like there's like sand in the air.
Yeah.
We wanted him to bring that vastness, and so we just talked to him about these movie elements and these different scenes, and he did his magic as always. I mean, he's worked with us for years, and
Correct.
so it only takes a little bit for him to be like, I got you, fam. You know, he knows what we want.
So you mentioned the vocals. So now, first of all, your vocals are amazing. You have an impressive range. You can go to almost soprano-like, to more calmer, more melodic. And then you add growling. How did this happen and how you can do that live now?
Just some practice, some technique, some coaching I got with Mary Zimmer and also Melissa Cross,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that I was doing a technique that would be safe and wasn't harming my voice. And so once they taught me how to do that, then it's just playing around. You know, oh, my cats are fighting. I know that I know my voice very well, and to add this other modality to it just seemed like the right thing to do. I didn't want there to be any vocal elements that were just out of like that I don't possess, you know, other than like Gregorian chants or something, or the dual tone singing. But you know, I wanted to make it's like if I'm a metal singer, I want to make sure that I do all the things that a metal singer does. And I've been chastised and internet encouraged to be like, oh, you know, it'd be so cool to growl, it'd be so cool to growl. In the past, I've done when I record the demos for what the guys have done, I would do the growls and they would just re-record them. And so this time around, after practicing and we talked about it, and I was like, I want to try it because with the new guys, they don't necessarily have the growls and maybe some of the technicality to play and do the growls, especially with some of our time signatures. It can be a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very particular about what I wanted this go around, and I didn't want them to have to learn and then potentially not be able to do it live as smoothly. And so I was like, well, I'll just do it. And so once I took some lessons trying to get the tone and everything that I wanted, I felt confident, and they're like, oh, we'll record it. And it's a lot of fun. Like I guess I always thought of it as like pretty singular. But what's neat is like everybody's growl will kind of sound different because your literal vocal cords only make a certain
Specific,
shape when it goes to doing them. So I was like, well, that's really neat because your growl is such a signature anyway. And then to make it sound a certain way it's more about your actual shape of your throat and your voice versus the technicality. Like I find like doing the growls is a lot easier than doing the belting singing and like the going all out singing. And so it's really amusing to me too to switch back and forth really quickly, because it's not hard to do necessarily if you know what you're doing, but it sounds like such a feat, you know, and it's really fun, and it's something I look forward to like exploring more and playing with. But I felt like it was time, and then you know, you never know what's going to happen, and you never know. We always kind of treat every album like it could be our last, and so I'm like, why wait, you know? And so let's do it on this album and put it out there and try it out.
So did you decide to try this before the band started writing music, or Jobber started writing music? I'm trying to see how this decision, how adding another voice changed a little bit the songwriting, or was it the other way around?
Well, the songs were already written to have both styles of vocals.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a matter of who was going to do them and then me deciding that I would do them. And so it didn't really change anything about the timeline or like the process of writing the songs, because they were already written in mind with like, or written with like no coming up with this, because I write the vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Dalbert will write like the lyrics sometimes. But it's either him or I writing lyrics, and then I write all the vocal lines. And so it was just a matter of, okay, I wrote this harsh vocal to sound like this, who can do it?
Mm.
And then what are you playing when you do it? And can you play and do it at the same time? And then it was a little bit like, no. And so then it was like, it would be easiest if you could just do it. And so then it was kind of like, okay, let me learn or figure that out. And then it kind of just kept evolving from there.
Okay. How long did it take you to start doing this stuff?
Maybe like 2 lessons.
Okay.
Because I was doing it. It wasn't saying it's like it's a mode. I just had to make sure, because I would like try and do it, and then I'm like coughing. And I just had to make sure that, because I know how like not to lean into pain.
Mm.
And it's just another facet. It's like I can make the sounds. As a little kid, I was like a mockingbird. I'm gonna mimic the garbage disposal. I'm gonna mimic the fire engine going by. So it's like I can hear growl, and they're like, I'm gonna growl, And so I could do the growls, but I just had to make sure I was doing them right. That like, okay, a little bit of coughing is not bad. Or like when you first warm up, it can feel really abrasive, but it might tingle, but you're not hurting your vocal cords. Move on, it goes away, you're fine. And then once you're warmed up, where the pain, it's mostly just avoiding pain. And so I'm lucky and it makes me very happy, because I love singing so much, that instruction for doing new things comes very quickly.
Yeah.
And it can be confusing, I think, sometimes for people who don't do vocals or aren't as familiar with doing their vocals, because it's very hard to describe. And a lot of vocal teachers, it's like they're like, well, you're looking to feel like, and you're like, what does that mean? But if you don't really know, it's just like a secret language almost. And you're like, oh yeah, I need the, and you
Right,
get
right.
it. It's like, it just makes sense to me.
Yeah, well,
And so,
in my mind, I have now a note. Okay, Cammie is now singing like a garbage disposal. That's all I understood. But yeah, it's a different language. And
yeah,
this is an instrument that you cannot actually see.
right. I carry it around with me. It's very emotional. It's tied to if my stomach feels okay, if my head feels okay. And yeah, it's a little bit different for everyone, and where they think, how they envision the sound that they're making is coming from.
Right.
And so I think sometimes with finding a vocal instructor, it's not just about who they've taught, but what language they use to teach that may or may not make them a good vocal instructor for you. And so that's what I enjoy about Mary Zimmer and Melissa Cross, is I understand their language and they break it down in a way that helps me. And they're both very giving, and fun to work with. But yeah, I think I talked with them 4 times total. And then I didn't have a lot of time. So then I ran with it, and we were already, going to be going to Bogota, and I just got to it. But just dive in. The first time I did it live, I was nervous. Everybody talks so much shit because they're like, it's not, oh, how's she going to pull this off live? But like, that's the thing about our band, is we don't put a bunch of stuff on my voice. The whole point is that I sound on the recording like I'm going to sound live. Yes. And so it's like, we don't rely on a bunch of studio magic to make me sound different. And so I was like, let me make sure everything is pristine. I'm hydrated. I'm warmed up, because I'm going to show y'all I sound exactly the same on the album as I do live. And there's like no tricks. Like, yeah, it's like there's no point to me of all singers. Why would I try and make myself sound different on the album if I can't pull it? Why would any singer want to? It's like, don't make it too crazy, because if you can't do it live, then you're going to be
Well,
stuck in a loop.
there are bands that sometimes even the guitar parts or the drum parts sound different when played live, but that's a different discussion.
And so,
um,
well, for us, at least vocally, it was going to sound the same. So I was very stoked when the first live recordings came out, and they're like, oh my God. And I was like, I told y'all, like, I'm not going to go do something new to suck at it. Like, come on.
Speaking about vocal melodies, you had Fernando from Moonspell and then Mike from Dark Tranquility. So did you provide the vocal melodies from them or the vocal lines, or did they have any say on their parts?
Um, they didn't, and I don't think they really wanted to. Like, I think that some, I mean, as, as far as them, I don't think that they necessarily wanted a lot of say. I wrote all the lines, but then I fully give it to them to change, or it's just anytime I write a duet, I write the parts obviously to fit within the frame of the song, but I'm like, anything that you feel like fits your voice better or would be a change that you might like within the framework of the song, like obviously do. Because I have, you know, nothing but respect for their band, like are huge fans of both of them. And I'm still so stoked, and it makes me smile so big to think like they're on my own. They did such a good job. Like their songs are so cool, and I cannot wait until they're out. Um, but no, I wrote the songs, but I wrote the songs with each of them in mind for their style and for their bands to sound. You know, it sounds like Oceans and Moonspell, or Oceans and Dark Tranquility. And so, you know, they might have changed a few things. I think Michael changed some melody lines, and
Okay.
then stylistically how he approached it. But it's like, of course, it needs to fit your voice and be what you feel is best. And it was amazing. It fits perfect. And then with Fernando, I mean, he just nailed it. He liked what we had. He can be a little solemn sometimes. So he's like, I don't, it's gonna suck, you're gonna hate it. And I'm like, no. I was like, I love it. He's like, it's so good. And it was so fun getting the video of him recording it. And man, I'm I feel so privileged, and these are probably my favorite duets we've had yet. Like, just so cool. These songs are so cool.
My first reaction, because Running to the Light, as it starts, it sounds like very close to Moonspell. And I was thinking like you did that in purpose to welcome Fernando to do this. So my first thought was, let's have Moonspell again in the US and have OCEANS on Slumber on the same billing. So now they can do that live, and you can help Fernando with Scorpion Flower.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. He'd
Okay,
love that.
good.
I'd love that.
Good.
All right, I'm gonna email him right now.
Okay, what about Wicked Game? How did you decide to cover Chris Isaac?
So that was really a a last minute, probably one of the like a Hail Mary type deal. We had been in Colombia, and it was our last day at the studio, and we were finishing up. We had, yeah, maybe like an hour or so left. Previously, while eating at dinner out in where like the town, a like terrible cover of Wicked Game came on, and it was like this EDM coffee house. Just it just really trashed the song. It tarnished the song. And Dauber was like so agitated about it. He's like, this sucks, it's terrible. And he's like, we should cover that song. And I'm thinking like, yeah, at some point later in the future, you know, every time he thinks of a thing, we have this ongoing list of like songs we should cover. So fast forward, we're back in the studio. It's the last day. I think I was very tired. I was very emotional, trying to finish up stuff and just getting really in on myself, probably crying at some point because I cry every time. And so he takes me in the other big room because there's a piano. He's like, let's take a little break, and he's like, I'm gonna play Wicked Game on the piano, and you just relax your voice, you know, and sing along if you know it. Like I know it, but like he's like, just sing along, right? And so we're just hanging out. I'm singing along, and a friend of ours who had come to visit us, she was recording it. And the room's really big, so I didn't know she was in there, and she's like recording it. So she comes over afterwards and she's like teary-eyed. She's like, "That's so beautiful. Like, are you guys doing that song?" And Dauber's like, "Yeah."
Sneaky.
And I was like, "Oh, we are." And we hadn't learned it, like we hadn't rehearsed it or anything. We had I can't even remember now, but we had another cover we were doing that the guys had like tracked and stuff already. And so we pull everything into the big room, mic it to do it live, run through it a couple of times, and then hit record. And that was the magic that we got.
Wow. And then I wanted to ask how that cover fits the concept, but that has nothing to do. So you should credit that place that you had lunch,
I know, we
because
find a restaurant and be like, take this off your playlist, replace ours with the other one on your playlist.
you have two music videos, and artistically, aesthetically are night and day. Although I think Poem of Ecstasy was filmed during the night, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
we were in yeah. Yeah, I guess they are quite different. The first one is more conceptual. You know, we wanted to add some heavy symbolism in there and make it feel very ritualistic. We don't have, you know, crazy budgets, and so we were looking for elements that would showcase these dualities that the song played on.
Mm-hmm.
And we felt like Shibari was the best, most concise, cheapest way to do that. And because it's such a interesting art form, I guess. Now it started as a full-on like torture technique that's become sort of an underground art form. It dabbles in taboo to high fashion. It's pleasurable but deeply uncomfortable at the same time. Like it's a wild experience to be put in shibari, but I think looking at it and witnessing it also invokes, you know, plenty of these same feelings. And so we I got with a group here in Houston and worked with them. I think I had 2 sessions before we did the video, and the pose that we wanted to do was a bit advanced, but so we were just going to do it quick, and we had about 5 people helping to get in this pose as quick as possible so I could be up and then be down, because being inverted like that and the amount of pressure and tension on these pressure points, like I see why people were tortured in it. It's definitely
You look so calm. How do you do that? I mean, come on.
a lot of, I mean, it's probably it takes a lot of mental, it's like a very, I mean, it's a mental exercise. I'm just hanging there literally, you know, so it's not like physically a lot for me to do other than keep breathing and staying calm. When in my head, you're right on the verge of just panic, because
Of
you're
course.
twisted, you can't move, and you're thinking about it's going to take them time to get me down. That if I don't measure this to know when I need to tell them to let me down, I'll pass out. And that would suck. You know, but I guess they'll know then to get me down. But it definitely you're and it's painful. So like everywhere that rope is tied, it's holding you so tight, because I think people kind of underestimate. If you've ever laid in like the little rope canopies at the park, you know how much you're like moving around.
Right.
If you're ever like on a swing, you know how much you can move around. So the fact that I'm so still in that pose should translate to how tight the ropes have to be to keep me that still. And so, you know, I had bruises for days, like deep bruises, and you can see like every little rivet that the rope makes when you take it off. That's how tight it is. And I need to post. I have like behind the scenes pictures and stuff that show a little bit more of that once you take the ropes off and everything. But I wanted to have that experience be a part of the video, because it's real, and if you catch it on camera, then that realness becomes a part of the song. It becomes a part of the experience that the viewer will take away with the song. And you know, it was a way to combine 2 art forms that, and I always find that incredibly exciting. And so
Yeah.
we just went for it. I wanted it to be extreme. And then with Poem of Ecstasy, we wanted this classic sort of 90s grungy feel band playthrough. We decided to do the like circle setup,
Yep.
you know, to kind of give it some movement, and that was a lot of fun. So
I won't
and
go.
then Wicked Game is out too. I think it's gone up. I'm not sure, but there's a video we had the live recording from in the studio. We have it, and we like did a secret posting. So if people like join our mailing list, they could see it, but it's supposed to be coming out on the YouTube station.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that. I want only to comment about, as you kept describing how you did that with the ropes, I felt stressed. So, oh boy. Anyhow, okay. So what about touring plans? What do you have in store for us?
Nothing I can share yet. You know, it's always lots of negotiating or whatever, secret talks. We have the festival that we're playing, the Metal Injection Festival in September.
Okay.
We'll be there. So that's on the books, so I can say that one. But for now, nothing else I can announce yet.
So at least you can tell me from what side of the Atlantic you will start. It will be from the US or
I don't even know.
Okay, fair enough.
It's always usually East Coast when we do something, but I guess it just stays around the outside. We don't go through the middle.
So I'm in Chicago, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah, Chicago's always a good hit.
Cammie, thank you very much for your time. If there is anything else that you would like to say, I forgot to ask. Please make sure my vinyl comes in a good state. You had some very, very cool colors. And now that I mentioned that, I will interrupt myself and ask you, do you have any say with the colors you're doing?
Yes, we got to pick. We had like a little miscommunication on this one, but we did. I mean, that's something Susan and Miss have done that's been very cool, that I don't call
Amazing
we did as much before. But yeah, we got to pick the variants that we chose, and they're kind of like these blackout flares, and then the sunburst flare.
Yes.
And so they're kind of like these voids, and then it'll be like the transparency, so they look really cool in motion. And so those are the specific band variants that we had. So if you buy either the orange flare or the black orange flare, then that goes straight to us. Like that's from the band. Those would be the ones that we're mailing out.
Perfect. So once those versions are gone, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think there's only like between the two 150 total in that design. So limited time only.
Anything else that you would like to add? Because I interrupted myself closing the interview. So
no, I think we've covered a good amount, and I feel good about it. I'm excited for the album to be out and everybody to get the full taste of it, and that's the exciting part, the full album being out. So
I agree. Soon. Thank you very much again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.